bit longer time. So thanks for your patience, but let's give maybe another minute for our colleagues to come in. And if not, I would also actually like to invite you to maybe sit closer so we feel like a closer, tight family. Great. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for finding your way to this session. It's my pleasure to moderate this session on evaluating environmental sustainability and climate change. My name is Keteva Nozadze. I lead country engagements and climate work at Global Evaluation Initiative, GEI. This session, as you know, is under the stream future, but we are all well aware that climate and environmental sustainability is not a problem in the future. Indeed, it's a very active problem now, and it requires complexity, and it threatens the current economic, social, environmental well-being. In this session, we will aim to share knowledge, tools, practices, and challenges that we have today to meaningfully integrate and address climate and environmental concerns through evaluations. We will also reflect on needs and opportunities to strengthen national evaluation systems and capacities in a way that it can inform better policies for planet and the people. I'm here with a distinguished panel of speakers, and I'm happy to introduce them to you. To my left, you can see Dr. Tian Lei. Tian Lei is the Deputy Director at Energy Research Institute, Academy of Macroeconomic Research. The Academy is part of China's National Development and Reform Commission and serves as a main body to provide comprehensive studies related to energy and decarbonization. Next to him, you'll meet Dr. Gansu Jia. He's a professor and a director at Global Change Research Center for East Asia at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Dr. Gansu has served as a lead author and contributed to numerous flagship reports on environment and climate, including IPCC's special report on climate change, UN Global Environmental Outlook, and UN Global Sustainable Development Report. Very happy to have you. And next to him is Dr. Andy Rowe. He's an accomplished evaluator and a former president of Canadian Evaluation Society with extensive experience in environmental evaluations, and he's also one of the main authors of Footprint Evaluation Approach. I'm also happy to introduce you government representatives who will help me to further share the experiences from the government side. To my right, you see Camille Spencer, who's the Director of Monitoring and Evaluation at the Ministry of Planning and Development from Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks you, Camille, for joining us. Next to her, you see Thokozile Mulaiva, Chief Director of Evaluation at the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation of South Africa. And last but not the least, we have Eddie Garcia Serrano from Head of Evaluations Unit at the Ministry of Planning of Costa Rica. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to have a diverse panel of experts, evaluators, and government leads representing evaluation, and I believe this will be an interesting discussion. I will start with our hosts in China. China has a very ambitious goal to reach carbon neutrality in 2060, and this requires significant reforms in the fields of energy, environment, economic, and social sectors. How do you see the role of evaluations in informing policies and governance of green transition in China and worldwide? I think your inputs, given that you have led quite intensive work on evaluations in China, will be very interesting. Over to you.
也非常感谢啊，我也能很高兴这个今天。我也很高兴今天能够参加本次活动，也很高兴有机会啊，然后来向大家介绍一下我们现在在开展的一些这个协助中国政府在做的一些这个能源转型的研究和评估这方面的这个工作。正如刚才主持人所介绍，我们主要是从事的是这个能源转型方面的研究。这如大家所知呢，在应对气候变化的这个要求下，实际上这个能源转型是最重要的这个或者说最关键的领域之一啊。所以整个加快能源向可再生能源的转变啊，这个不仅是中国，然后也是这个全球的这个共识。中国在这个方面呢，从政府政策的角度这个从习近平总书记提出来碳达峰、碳中和之后啊，中国在这个方面。这个采取了很多的这个举措，然后这个我们呢，然后主要在其中呢开展了这个能源转型的主要开展了能源转型的这个评估。在评估的过程当中呢，我们综合采用了这个国内外的这种政策对比啊，这个实地的调研。数据模型这个等分析方法特别是我们采用了这个自行建立的整个能源转型的一个评估模型，用这个模型呢，然后来开展一些这种定量化的评估。这个模型系统呢，涵盖了这个整个的能源供应、能源的转换和最终的用能它这几个环节。有三个核心的模型和2个辅助的模型既包括中国终端的能源需求的分析模型，也包括中国电力部署的这个优化模型，还有中国经济社会的评价模型，以及相应的这个技术经济评估和政策实施的后评估模型。我们的评估的结果，特别是这个定量化的这些分析结果呢，为中国的各个部委来分析相关政策的这个成效。改进政策的着力点，优化政策的落地举措和流程方面，应该说都还是提供了比较好的支撑。其中比较有代表性的呢，也是支撑了中华人民共和国国务院新闻办公室对外公开发布的中国的能源转型这样一本白皮书。从我们的这个评估结果呢，然后我也结合这个我们。做的这些结果然后来介绍一下这个中国在能源转型方面，确实在这些年还是取得了这个比较好的一些这个成绩也体现了中国在能源绿色低碳转型方面的这个产生的这个巨大作用。 第一个呢是中国的这个清洁能源，现在从我们这个梳理的数据来看啊，这个应该发展速度非常快。2023年，中国清洁能源的消费比重达到了26.4%，其中这个中国原来以煤炭为主啊，这个整个煤炭的消费比重，在过去的10年之间下降了12.1个百分点。而从发电来看，中国的发电的总装机容量达到了29.2亿千瓦，而其中呢，以风电、光伏包括水电在内的这个清洁能源的发电装机就达到了17亿千瓦，已经占到了发电装机总容量的58%左右啊，已经超过一半。而且呢，从它的这个发电量上来看啊，过去10年之间，中国新增的清洁能源的发电量占到了全社会用电增量的1半以上啊。中国能源整个的无论是能源还是电力啊，它这个整个绿色低碳的这种含氯量啊，它是在不断的在提升。第二个呢，为了支撑这个清洁能源的发展啊，中国在过去的10年之间，在能源领域的固定资产的投资，累计大概在39万亿元人民币啊，也显著的拉动了这个能源产业上下游这个产业链和相关产业的这个投资的增长啊，并使清洁能源产业也成为了这个现在中国经济发展的一个非常重要的一个支柱性的产业。第三个方面呢，中国的能源转型也给中国的能源转型，然后也给居民的生活改善然后也带来了这个非常显著的改善。中国在2015年就解决了这个全国的无电人口的用电问题啊，中国的这个人均的生活用电量已经现在接近了1000千瓦时。另外，中国的能源转型呢，也为全球的能源转型也做出了这个自己的贡献在中国的这种产业的带动之下整个全球的这个风电、光伏的这个成本也大幅度的下降也使很多国家的这种可再生能源的发展速度能够进一步加快。据不完全统计，23年中国出口的这个风电、光伏的产品，也使这个其他国家的这个减排二氧化碳大概超过了8亿吨这我想这个是我们这个基于我们自己的模型，然后对于中国以及中国的这个新能源产业的发展对全球的能源转型做的一些贡献的一些评估的结果。好，谢谢。
Thank you, Dr. Lei. I think for me, what you mentioned, the importance of integration of social economic model with environmental and climate study, I think that is very important aspect whenever we're talking about evaluating policies for guiding transition to greener economy, which is a long-term journey. And you also mentioned the importance of doing evaluations at the design of defining pathways and policies, which is an important instrument for evidence-based policy making. So thank you for making this, also sharing this to the audience. I'll move with Dr. Jia. You have extensive experience working on global reports on climate and environment. If you look at it under a national evaluation capacities framework or national evaluation practices, where do you think the country national evaluations can improve how they approach evaluating climate and environment?
Thank you. Yeah, I am quite new to this NEC the first time. And I'm a scientist, so not a policymaker. But I will try to provide some perspective from science community and talk about science policy interface. First, it's about challenges. I think the major barrier prevent us to put the environmental and especially climate change targets into our evaluation is a lack of understanding of the interactions and linkages. And we're now in the process of UNEP Global Environment Outlook 7, and we're talking about the triple plus one or triple crisis: climate change, biodiversity loss, and land degradation or air pollution. We talk a lot about how they are linked. Actually, those three are really interconnected with full of synergy and trade-off. For example, the climate change. They really influence the land quality and land degradation, and also the feedback of any land degradation or restoration will influence the climate system. And so as biodiversity, and biodiversity and ecosystem services influenced by climate change and extremes. And the biodiversity provide a solid base for nature-based solution. So it's very clear that we are facing the multiple challenges. They are linked, but our action or our evaluation must be also reflecting those interlinkages. This is my first message. Second one is back to climate action. I think we know that even for many countries, even the global north countries, we're still struggling with putting climate target into our national evaluation. The problem is that, of course, there's a political willingness, but one of the big questions is where lack of understanding of co-benefit, or we totally ignore the co-benefit of climate action with environmental and socio-economic. But they are there everywhere. For example, if you think about renewable energy, if we put renewable energy and increase the energy use efficiency, we save money. We also have a boost our economy, and also making climate benefit. And also, if you, I think many of you went to the Great Wall yesterday, even the weather is not so good, and there's a lot of green, and green forest and green urban green. I think the number one keywords in this country, and especially this city now, is green. So we are turning green, which plant a lot of trees, and we restore the wetland in the city center. But it's not just for climate target. It is climate target is create a carbon sink, and also provide a buffer for extreme climate. But they're also beneficial to recreation, to local environment, to everything. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So I think it's quite clear. And the third point and last point is technology. We are now in an era of artificial intelligence, big data. And we know that for national evaluation for many countries, especially developing countries, where lack of reliable data and also information. This new technology, digital technology, really provide a new frontier for us to have a much better data, much better information. And currently, my institute, Chinese Academy of Sciences, we are working on a so-called Big Earth Data Science Engineering program, started about 6 years ago. The objective was, of course, first one is provide a common platform, data platform for supporting science, especially Earth system science, and also the support the policy. So by providing all the different parameters of Earth system together, we can have a better understanding of their linkages and their actions. Just like I just mentioned that when we put all the environmental parameters, climate parameters in the Earth system, we can have a much better understanding, and we can have a much systematic view to support policy, support national and subnational evaluation. I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Jie. These are excellent points, and I really like your emphasis on being more aware of the linkages of climate with national development agenda that needs to translate into the M&E work that countries do, into thinking a bit more focused on the climate co-benefit analysis into the overall national evaluation agendas. And third but not the least, to think how to better use technology and especially use it when we're doing national and subnational evaluations. Will that be using Earth data or other advanced informational technologies? Thank you very much. I'll move now with Dr. Andy Rowe. Andy, your research extends from climate focus to more environmental lens. Where do you see problems and challenges in today's national evaluation capacities? And what do you think needs to change to better address environmental concerns in the evaluations?
This is on? Yes. Thank you, Ketty, and thanks to everyone, DVAL, UNEP, and GEI, for helping me be here. And I want to acknowledge before I start that I'm located on Vancouver Island on the northwest coast of the Americas, which is the traditional and customary territory of the Coast Salish Nation, and in particular the Cowichan tribes. And I acknowledge that this land has never been ceded by treaty or other agreements, so I recognize the sovereign rights of the Coast Salish Nation and Cowichan tribes to these lands. So what needs to change in evaluation? Those of you who know me know that my problem is doing this succinctly and quickly and not going on for a very long time. So first thing I'd ask you to do is, we have this usual portrayal of the 17 SDGs. It looks like a family photograph. Everyone is there together equally and not connected to each other, like a typical dysfunctional family. That's not how we need to look at them. We need to really adopt the Stockholm Resilience Center's wedding cake approach, where the environmental or natural system SDGs, 6, clean water and sanitation, 13, climate, 14, life below water, and 15, life on land. They're the foundation for all other SDGs, which is exactly what you were talking about. So how we view the SDGs cannot be they are separate and independent. We have to view society and economy as drawing from, always drawing from, and leaving deposits on the natural system SDGs. So they're the foundation layer of the wedding cake. And really what we're seeing today is a result of plundering nature, plundering those foundations of the wedding cake in pursuit of priorities in economy and society. And as a result, the foundation layer of the wedding cake is now absolutely unable to support the other layers, to support society and economy SDGs. Now, I now think of nature as a donor. Everything we do draws from and deposits on natural systems. So nature is a donor to everything we do. And we would never get away treating any donor like we treat nature, by disregarding the donor, ignoring the fact that we've almost depleted its account, and yet we keep asking for more and more in increasing amounts. We need urgently to recognize our dependence on nature as a donor, and to do this, we need to stop thinking about or, the adjective or, as in, well, you can have economy or environment, you can have gender or you can have economy. That doesn't work. What we need is and. We need economy and we need environment and we need gender and we need indigenous. And we can do that. We have lots of examples where that is exactly what development interventions are addressing and successfully achieving. So we need to change that mindset to recognize the critical values provided by nature, and we need to respect those values and start replenishing nature's trust fund. The second big change is then that recognize there is a distinguishing characteristic of nature as a trust fund. That is, that trust fund contains accounts that are national and subnational, and accounts that are global. Global accounts are things like the oceans, like the atmosphere. National accounts are embedded in biodiversity and the other things that the previous speakers have addressed. And that countries need to use those accounts, their accounts in that trust fund, in the Nature Trust Fund, for their own benefit. Countries need to stop disregarding those accounts because they're finite and limited, and the countries will suffer the most as those accounts get depleted, and nature cannot provide what we're asking for as humans. Now, evaluation ignores natural systems. In stock takings done by the Canadian Evaluation Society and the UN Environment or Evaluation Group, we have together found that less than 5% of evaluation, that is evaluations conducted plus the literature and the training and the conference presentations, etc., less than 5% deal with natural systems or sustainability. And what that reflects is that evaluation doesn't care about nature, or it doesn't recognize the fundamental importance of nature. What it also means is that we leave nature out of evaluations. And this is important because if you keep in mind that our job is to assess and testify to the merit or worth, the value of interventions, if we systematically leave out what are harmful effects but direct outcomes from the intervention, our interventions directly cause harmful environmental effects. If we leave those out, then we're not getting our assessments of the value of the intervention right. We're systematically getting it wrong. We're systematically being too optimistic, too positive. Therefore, we are systematically contributing to continuing to do the same things, which is to ignore nature and further deplete the trust fund. So evaluation radically needs to change. And it needs to do so early. 2030 is recognized in the Paris Accord as a critical date where key natural systems are going to reach thresholds beyond which recovery is not possible. Most importantly, biodiversity and atmosphere. Well, think about it. 2030, that's only 6 years away. The typical life of a development intervention is 6 years. From design, inception and design, negotiation, original sort of implementation, and then full scale, and then the evaluation happens. So evaluation is not going to report until we already crossed those really critical thresholds. So as evaluation is now, business as usual evaluation does not have the possibility of contributing to addressing climate change or environmental sustainability. That's something that radically needs to change. What we need is a more urgent, more proactive, more forward-located evaluation. It's quite possible, as the previous speaker has demonstrated, for us to forecast the environmental effects of something, to forecast them before there's any empirical observation on it. And we need to do that so that we do not in future implement things that we know or we should know are going to harm the environment. We should sort those out. And this is really important for countries because there are scarce country resources included in every one of those initiatives. So not only are those nature accounts national and scarce and limited, so are the other resources that are now currently being wasted and historically being wasted on interventions that are harmful, and will further draw that down.
Thank you, Andy. We hear you loud and clear that looking for SDGs, we cannot leave out natural systems, and that evaluations need to systematically look at what are the impacts on nature, will that be intended or unintended. And I think also interesting factor you mentioned is that main time there is conflicting interests and maybe focus on the evaluations are different. But us as evaluators, we need to think how that might be impacting environment and have the possibility to integrate natural lens into our evaluations. Thank you. I'll now move with my government my government panel, and let me start it with a representative of a small island country, Trinidad and Tobago, where I believe the climate threats are most imminent. Camila, maybe you can tell us a bit from your perspective, where you sit, how you see the importance of climate in environmental lens into what evaluation agenda delivers in your country.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. In 30 seconds, to let you know, I am from the beautiful Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, a twin island state. We are located very close to the country of Venezuela, and our population is only 1.4 million people. And so the idea of climate change has a significant role in our national development agenda. And given our vulnerability to sea level rise, to extreme weather events, and of course to changing rainfall patterns. So climate change and our vulnerability is something that is very crucial to our development. For example, incorporating this whole discussion about climate change and environment is very central to our national development agenda called Vision 2030, which it's built on 5 pillars, and one of those pillars of our national development strategy is placing the environment at the center of social and economic development. We have created an entire priority as a nation that is focused on the environment. And within this, we incorporate climate change initiatives, broader goals for sustainable development. My colleague mentioned the SDG 13 climate action and several other SDG goals. It's really a multi-pronged approach to our development, recognizing the role of the environment, recognizing the need for us to preserve what we have now, and also to make sure it's sustainable for the future. So when it comes to incorporating evaluation and placing climate change on the evaluation agenda, by its shared position within our national development strategy, it's already on the agenda at the highest level. We have incorporated and developed climate-specific indicators and metrics, which are clear, measurable indicators that we can use to reflect and track our progress to achieving goals up to Vision 2030, and of course, what we have signed on to with the Paris Agreement, and by extension, the SDG goals. At the policy level, not just only at that big, broad macro level, coming down at a sectorial level, we have developed our national climate change policy. And within that policy, at the national level, we have incorporated specific results. It speaks to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, building our resilience to climate impacts, also looking at the effectiveness of our initiatives in energy efficiency, renewable energy deployment, and also climate adaptation projects. So with this, we have incorporated climate change on our evaluation agenda when it extends not just at the national level, the policy level, but also at the project level. That evaluation is throughout in terms of looking at the effectiveness of our infrastructure improvements, our early warning systems, community-based adaptation programs. At each level, we are tracking our progress and evaluating whether we are achieving the long-term results that we have set out to achieve. So I will just wrap this up because I know I only have a limited amount of time, that by incorporating climate change into our agenda, we are serious about our approach and the work that we are doing, because our survival is dependent on us being able to manage our present so that we can sustain our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Camila. I think you, in a way, are reflecting on what Dr. Jia has recommended, that there is an importance to link climate with development agenda, and then managing to translate this into how national evaluation agendas are developed and what national evaluations look at. Thank you for that reflection. Let me move to South Africa and learn from Togozin, sorry, apologies, how it is done in Africa. Over to you.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thanks for the opportunity to participate in the panel. So in the South African case, for us to include or consider climate issues, we have developed two evaluation guidelines which assist the evaluators on how to apply the climate and ecosystems health criterion as well as transformative equity criterion in evaluation of all government programs. And these are applied together with the OECD DEC evaluation criteria. I'm not going to mention them, you know them. And also one of them is sustainability, but we just felt like it was not enough to address the issues of the climate crisis that we are facing. So our transformative equity criterion focuses on the extent to which an intervention's objective, design as well as implementation and impact contribute to or do not contribute to us addressing systematic inequalities and also the promotion of a more inclusive society. And it has a number of dimensions which, for example, it looks at population who is benefiting from a particular intervention, as well as cause and effect, and also space to see which areas are inequalities persisting, and also content and intention of the intervention as well as timing. So that was the transformative equity criterion. On the climate and ecosystems health criterion, this assesses the impact that results from the interaction between the intervention activities and practices and the climate and ecosystems. And then when you apply these criterion, then you will be able to make recommendations on how intervention practices can be improved to make more positive contributions to climate and ecosystems health, and also make intervention participants more adaptive. So our guideline on climate and ecosystems health has got 3 dimensions, one of which is how the intervention impacts on climate and ecosystems health, and how the climate crisis and ecosystems breakdowns also affect the intervention, as well as the adaptive capacity of the intervention. I think I can stop here. You had also asked about challenges, or maybe later.
Thank you. No, I think this is very interesting to know that South Africa is pretty much pioneering expanding OECD criteria and guiding evaluators to integrate some mandatory indicators which specifically focuses on ecosystem health, on impact on nature. That's something that I believe Dr. Andy will be very happy to hear about, as well as transformative equity. So I think as years come, we'll be very interested to see what results you bring from expanding the criteria and lens into your evaluations. Last but not the least, I'll move to Costa Rica, who's also a country with very ambitious decarbonization plan, and I'm very interested to learn how Costa Rica is integrating climate and environmental lens into its evaluations.
Thank you very much for choosing this panel and for being here, and for the organization of the panel. You deserve the best of me, so I'm gonna let me switch to Spanish to do my presentation. So I recommend you put your dispositive. Lo primero que quiero mencionar en relación con la pregunta es, como han dicho diversas menciones en el panel inicial, el trabajo conjunto y no el camino en solitario es el que rinde más frutos. Justamente el proceso de evaluación que lideramos desde Mideplan tiene esta característica muy impregnada. Desde Mideplan lideramos la materia evaluativa, pero la materia evaluativa por sí misma no hace nada. La evaluación se aplica a un campo específico y en este caso trabajamos de la mano con las instituciones para desarrollar los procesos de evaluación. Y las distintas intervenciones públicas que desarrollamos en el país, y asimismo se nos han unido y tenemos la expectativa también de que eso se continúe generando alianzas, apoyos, por ejemplo la cooperación internacional para desarrollar procesos conjuntos. El sector ambiente nacional tiene un gran protagonismo y gran apertura por desarrollar evaluaciones, lo cual no suele ser una casualidad, ¿verdad? No suele ser algo común. Ellos nos solicitan evaluar intervenciones públicas relacionadas con la materia ambiental. En los últimos 5 años hemos evaluado igual un año cada intervención o una intervención cada año, los cuales quisiera mencionar porque prácticamente estos programas resumen lo que es o la imagen que tiene Costa Rica a nivel global de, digamos, toda su imagen verde y de protección ambiental. Hemos evaluado el programa de pagos por servicios ambientales que financia a las personas por la protección de bosques, los distintos tipos de bosques. Hemos evaluado el Plan Nacional de Energía, que es fundamental, ¿no?, como la estrategia de desarrollo que tenemos en el país, el Plan Forestal, la Política Nacional de Adaptación al Cambio Climático. Ok, sí. Voy a hablar más despacio, porque están haciendo líos con la traducción. Sí, la Política Nacional de Adaptación al Cambio Climático y la Estrategia de Biodiversidad. Y en orden para ir respondiendo más finamente la pregunta, ¿cuáles son algunas lecciones aprendidas que hemos capturado de estas evaluaciones y de otras más que hemos desarrollado? Una tiene que ver con elementos conceptuales y de formulación. Identificamos que las políticas todavía, los programas, los proyectos todavía tienen dificultades para concretar objetivos, para definir indicadores, para establecer metas concretas por las cuales se pueda medir sus avances y sus progresos. También una débil orientación hacia los resultados. Nos quedamos mucho en qué hacemos, cómo lo hacemos, y no tanto estamos visualizando desde la evaluación en el para qué estamos ejecutando estas intervenciones, lo cual es clave. Otra gran lección aprendida es el tema de gobernanza. Una sola institución, como lo mencionaba al inicio, no es capaz de afrontar todos los desafíos y todos los retos que puede tener un tema particular, llámese cualquiera: ambiente, agua, energía, deforestación, X. Tenemos que trabajar en conjunto y hemos identificado debilidades en el conjunto de instituciones que tienen cierta responsabilidad para atender las problemáticas nacionales. Y otro gran punto de mejora que hemos visualizado en estas evaluaciones tiene que ver con los datos y los sistemas de información que soportan y que dan sustento a la toma de decisiones. Me voy a detener acá y espero que se haya entendido medianamente bien, y me voy a reservar la palabra para más adelante. Gracias.
Thank you, Adi. I think you emphasized the ongoing evaluations in Costa Rica, which specifically focuses on biodiversity, on climate, and creating a legal and systematic approach to conducting the evaluations going forward. Maybe just in 2 words, I will ask you to reflect what do you think needs to improve in Costa Rica for a long term to what needs to change for Costa Rica to be able to support the future challenges? Will that be a climate change or transition to a green economy? And how can evaluations inform policies in this direction? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities and needs?
Thank you very much for your question. Como estaba diciendo antes, tenemos un gran trabajo en lo que tiene que ver con gobernanza de datos. Y gobernanza de datos es la interoperabilidad de sistemas de información, cómo usamos datos, información para tener política pública de precisión, de calidad. Eso es un tema importante. Tenemos que echar mano, como lo han dicho otras colegas acá, de la tecnología. Ese es el vehículo que consideramos que nos puede llevar a solventar esa situación. Y tenemos situaciones muy curiosas, como que instituciones públicas venden información, lo cual pues realmente es inaceptable, no si queremos que avanzar de manera decidida en esta materia. El otro gran reto que podemos identificar tiene que ver con la responsabilidad. No solamente debe recaer en el Ministerio de Ambiente o Energía, ni en el sector Ambiente y Energía. Y ahí tenemos una visión sectorialista que, en mi opinión, debería de tender a derrumbarse y de pensar en cómo trabajamos más colaborativamente para atender los desafíos de manera integral, ¿sí? Y estoy seguro que Andy también, como lo mencionaba antes, visualizar que la responsabilidad de atender esta problemática obedece a toda acción humana, y no debe centrarse únicamente en las instituciones que tienen cierto mandato normativo para ello, ¿no? Y como último punto, desde mi plan estamos apostando también a generar por medio de procesos de evaluaciones y tener un caso especial que pueda tener un potencial demostrativo relevante aplicando el enfoque de Footprint Evaluation. Lo que significa, ¿y qué significa esto? Bueno, que podamos tener un caso, tal vez en la próxima NEC venga a presentarlo, ya veremos si me invitan. ¿Qué significa esto? Tener un proceso evaluativo que pueda generar adeptos, ¿sí? Movilizar voluntades, suprimir resistencias, abrir rutas y sobre todo movilizar acciones hacia el futuro. Gracias.
Gracias, Eddie. I think you mentioned very important points on the importance to enhance the quality of data that looks at climate, environment, but also other social economic aspects. The importance of integrating advanced technologies and ITs into harnessing the right data, but also the importance that the role and responsibility should not only lie to the Ministry of Environment, that responding to climate work requires stronger coordination on the policy level as well as on M&E level, and the National Evaluation Office can support that through providing evaluations, through providing the right data and supporting the coordination across. I will ask the audience to, in a way, think of interesting questions, but before I turn to you, I want to actually ask also the other representatives from the countries to reflect what could be the main needs and opportunities as well as challenges to future-proof national M&E systems so that you can better address climate, environmental challenges as well as the long-term journey that we talk when we talk about green transition or decarbonization. I'll start with my island friend.
Okay. I'll just say three things. One, the two worlds need to meet. My main area of work and expertise is in evaluation, and I have my climate specialists on the other end. And oftentimes we operate in two different worlds. But I think what we need for the future is a combination of both worlds, where we incorporate evaluation into our climate development planning and our climate initiatives. As a developing island state, I think we also need to strengthen our data systems and climate information management systems. It's an area where we still face challenges for having robust and reliable real-time data on essential monitoring climate indicators that I think that we need to improve if we have to really monitor and evaluate our progress for the future. And thirdly, we need to pursue the development of adaptive and flexible M&E systems. Most times we think of evaluation as something being static, and this is the result that is set for a particular period of time. These are the initiatives, and that's it. And we only evaluate at the end of it. But I think we need to be more adaptable, given that we are in a climate change era where everything has changed. So then our systems should change to reflect the change that we are experiencing when it comes to climate change and the environment. So allowing these adjustments in our evaluation systems or evaluation agenda to adapt with the emerging climate data and trends is something that we can be more dynamic at, and looking to the future that we can be more responsive to what is coming next. So that's it.
Thanks. On our side, since the the guidelines that I spoke to are fairly new, I think we need to create awareness on those two criteria and also train people on how to apply them in their evaluations. And I think maybe the other thing that needs to happen for M&E systems is that the systems should focus on promoting regenerative practices in addition to being having systems for learning and also accountability. There's also a greater need for integrating monitoring and evaluation systems with planning for adaptation, as my colleague has indicated, and I think this will ensure that evaluation also contributes to the future rather than being used as a review mirror. So we need to undertake evaluations not only at the end of the interventions, but even when we're planning interventions, we can also do, for example, diagnostic or design evaluation to make sure that the interventions that we come with are responding to the climatic crisis, and further moving away from just evaluation or evaluating projects or programs to evaluating systems or using systematic thinking to undertake evaluations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll also move to ask the same question to my experts. Maybe I'll start with Dr. Andy Rowe. Where do you see the national M&E systems? What do you think they need the most to enhance integration of environmental lens and, in a way, future-proofing how M&E systems serve in the future?
I'm very optimistic, perhaps stubbornly optimistic would be the right phrase. But the change is going to come from the country level and sub-country level because they're the ones whose feet are getting wet from sea level rise and houses are being flooded and intolerable conditions exist. And I don't believe that an evaluation that ignores that will be tolerated or supported. So I think there will be a transformation that leads the rest of the world or leads us in the north and leads the multinational and bilateral organizations in discovering how to do it well, how to set our theories of change so they include climate and sustainability and environmental effects, how to communicate evaluation findings in a positive and constructive way, and how to do this without breaking the budget or the timeline. We know all this can be done. We're doing it with Colombia. We're doing it with Global Affairs Canada. We have lots of examples of interventions that do this from the Global South, but evaluation is not currently capturing them. And I think that the evaluation that will capture them and will capture them soon is going to come from the Global South. The problem is that we have to listen. We have to hear what is going on in the Global South and how you're doing it and adopt that into our other evaluation, our more northern-focused evaluations. So I'm stubbornly optimistic. Actually, I'm just optimistic. I see wonderful things happening. I have a lot of confidence. And we have things happening, like in South Africa, to the OECD DAC criteria, they added a separate criteria. In footprint evaluation, we embedded it in each of the criteria, embedded environmental sustainability. We have many people working on this in many different ways. And we're working collaboratively and aware and respectfully with each other, and that's got to be good for what we need to do.
Thank you, Dr. Andy. Dr. Tian, I would like to also hear from you, maybe based on your experience in China, what would make the use of evaluations more enhanced in China as well as in other countries? And I think the emphasis on what you have described on designing and advising on pathways, on policies, how do we manage to communicate that in a way that the findings of evaluations are taken forward?
谢谢您的提问。这个，我觉得从我们现在做评估的一些经验上来讲，哈，就是，要使这个我们评估的结果能够更好的这种支撑这种政策的这种制定和改进，实际上这个也面临一些这种困难和挑战。从具体的工作层面上来讲，就如这个您就如主持人和刚才这个各位专家所讲到的，整个数据和评估结果的一个数据的一个准确性和它的一个有效性，以及这个不同因素之间的它一个相互之间交叉影响的一个定量评估，这我觉得是在具体的工作当中是要着重是要进一步要改善的地方。另外呢，可能更重要的就是说，要基于这个评估的结果，可能要进一步来平衡这个不同层面的这种刚才也提到，就是说因为这个像这个气候问题和这个复杂性它涉及到多个层面，就是如何平衡好不同层面之间的这种关系，然后来推动目标这个实现。这我觉得这个也是现在一个比较重要的问题。比如说，对我们现在在做的这个能源转型的这个评估来讲，在安全、经济跟绿色这三者的要求之间，你如何取得一个统筹平衡的一个结果？比如说，现在我们要进一步要发展这个风电和光伏，那这个风电光伏它自身的这种间歇性、波动性和不稳定性的问题。它这个会对整个的能源电力系统会带来很大的冲击，而且也比较贵，这个成本也挺高，所以但当然中国在这个方面也做了很多的这个工作，特别是在推动全球的这种风电和光伏的这种成本降低方面，光23年中国在以这个风电光伏为代表的清洁能源为主的这种能源转型方面的投资就超过了6700亿美元哈。但我觉得这个如果从更长期的来看，它 它是需要有一项这种长期的一个战略啊，然后需要在这个长期战略的这种指导之下，然后来推进这个相关的这种能源的这个转型的工作。但当然这个方面中国我理解中国是有一些这种经验的，中国制定了这个中长期的发展规划然后有明确的碳中和的发展目标，所以从当前到35年到50年到60年这个我们都有比较明确的这个经济社会以及相应的这种能源转型的这个目标，所以我觉得在这个长期的这种目标的指引之下，然后来推进这个工作，可能是这个比较有效的一种这种举措，包括那当然在这个过程当中，这个全球的合作，特别是要推动这种建立比较公平公正的这种均衡普惠的这种全球的这种能源转型的治理体系，我觉得也是非常有必要的。好，谢谢。
Thank you very much. And I'll move with my last question to Dr. Jia. How do you see the future of national evaluation systems? How can it help to maybe limit the gap of lack of knowledge we have about climate and environment? And how can national evaluation systems and practices better address environmental and climate concerns so that it helps to design better policies for people and the planet?
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I think I am also very positive to see that there is an increasing trend of including environmental and climate target into our evaluation. One thing I want to highlight here is the future. I think we are facing a nonlinear changing world full of surprise. We just finished one UNEP report called UNEP Foresight. We spent 1.5 years to have that report submitted to the Summit of the Future last month. We identified 18 emerging issues and the surprise by 2050. Those issues will likely shaping the world, especially the issue of environment. One example is nonlinear change of climate. I think IPCC has already identified that now the climate is shifting. So the climate term of climate is no longer the same as we understanding earlier. So climate is defined as a long-term weather. But now the climate is no longer stable and it's shifting. And therefore, the climate extremes, extreme weather, and disasters are changing. The totally change, shifting the timing and the location. Here in this city, Beijing, we experience a longer and longer growing season, and a full color coming later and later, and we have experienced early spring. And this year we have experienced much more rainfall than average year. And last year we have much hotter spring. Very early in March, a very, very high temperature, over 30 for many days. So climate is changing and the weather patterns changing. We have to prepare for our in our evaluation system. We have to consider those surprise and uncertainty and nonlinear change so that we prepare for the future.
Thank you very much. With that, I will open to the audience. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. But we'll need a microphone. Maybe we'll collect 4 questions and then we'll go on the second round.
Thank you very much. This is a very interesting discussion. But my thinking is that we cannot have this discussion without discussing 2 things. One is the development nexus. And the second one that is very applicable to sub-Saharan Africa is poverty reduction. That the choices households are making is based on the poverty levels. While we hear the calls and the interventions, because I listened in, all our countries are doing well in terms of planning at strategic and policy level, at budgeting level. The issue is at implementation. So while we do this, I think what is very, very important is that we need to come up with interventions that are going to, one, not compromise the development nexus, but importantly, our cultural practices because of the poverty levels. And then lastly, I also want to understand from the professor on macroeconomic academy in China, and I'd want to understand how they are integrating, what assumptions are they using in terms of integrating environment and climate change in the socioeconomic model. Thank you.
¿Escucha? Ok, excelente. Yo tengo una pregunta para el compañero Eddie y es sobre evaluación y gobernanza. Él hablaba de que en el caso de Costa Rica se presentan retos a la hora de evaluar ciertas intervenciones, en este caso aplicadas a asuntos relacionados con el medio ambiente y el cambio climático. Entonces, me gustaría saber cómo esas relaciones de gobernanza, si lo ha hecho, han afectado el devenir de esas evaluaciones de los programas que se estuvieron aplicando en Costa Rica relacionados al tema del medio ambiente y cómo se solucionaron, aquellas que se pudieron solucionar, los conflictos de intereses que se pudieran hacer en esas dinámicas que quizás no necesariamente tenían en primera mano que ver con las evaluaciones de los programas en sí, pero que sí afectaban la capacidad de esos programas de ser evaluados. Entonces me gustaría saber cómo esos aspectos que se dieron y las soluciones que se dieron en cuanto a esos conflictos en la gobernanza.
Okay, so my question will be in English. And first of all, this question is coming from someone that is not an evaluator. I work in the innovation team at UNDP, where we are trying to do programming with a systemic view. So it tackles these interconnected things of the issues and so on, and there is an implication for the evaluation. I heard from all of you, that we live in uncertainty, that we don't know exactly how to achieve the change that we want to see. And then even when you do things, because there are so many co-benefits and interlinkages, it's quite hard to grasp. So I want to hear from all of you, what are the things that are maybe holding us back from having a more adaptive evaluation systems, or even the governance model? So these 2 points, governance and in having these more adaptive evaluation systems. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for raising these important issues and trying to reflect on this. I will also share my reflections, which are similar to a colleague from South Africa, which is about how is it difficult for evaluators to integrate environmental considerations is one question. But how difficult and extremely difficult it is in practice for the decision makers and those who are dealing with that on a daily basis to integrate environmental stability, sustainability, and linking it to the development priorities and the priorities of the communities. A lot is simply intrinsic in social, economic considerations and cultural tradition, and it's very difficult to shift. We all know that. It's much easier to produce more than use less resources. In my experience, when we were evaluating a global program, quite significant, which aimed to produce more without using or overusing natural resources, there was one famous team leader who said, there is a Chinese proverb, it's very difficult to find a black cat in a dark room, especially if the cat is not there. We simply could not find sustainable programs that have been replicated. All of them were pilot, small scale. Some of them failed, some of them did not produce results. So the question here is it only evaluators, but perhaps also science and research that need to factor in the design of these programs and address these inherent trade-offs between production and the environmental sustainability and using so-called integrated natural resource management? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll start first question. Dr. Tian, it was also about integrating the environmental and social and economic models into your research.
Yeah. 感谢您的这个提问，我觉得这也是非常好的一个问题。然后，现在通过我们现在构建这个模型系统，然后来做的这个评估来看呢，正如我刚才所说，它在实际的应用当中，实际上这种面临的这种困难和挑战其实也是不少的。就是说是首先是这个模型系统它自身的一个数据的一个完整性，包括一个数据准确性，以及你这个评估结果及时性的这么一个问题。但当然您提到的更关键的就是说它这个成果的一个怎么样来区分不同因素之间包括后边这也有提问，就是说是它的不同因素之间它的一个相互影响，这个要怎么样来去区分的问题，包括以及这个成果在政策的制定过程当中它怎么样在不同的这个平衡目标之间，然后这个在不同的目标之间要一个统筹平衡的问题。实际上我理解就是说从中国的这个政策实践上来讲我们是明确的提出来要围绕这个碳达峰和碳中和的这个目标，然后实际上围绕这个目标，根据我们这个采取的这种平衡的结果，我们会看就是说是在实现目标的过程当中，有哪些层面可能是相对做得比较好的，而有哪几个层面可能是需要进一步要加强的。比如说，就我熟悉的能源领域来讲，这个实际上这个您提到的就是说。不能因为这个资金问题去牺牲环境这个确实在实践的过程当中，实际上我们是通过这个不断的这种科技的创新，包括产业的这种迭代然后去降低这种新能源的这种投资的这种成本和所付出这种代价这我觉得这个。通过我们了解到的数据来看，通过这个产业的，通过各方面的努力，过去10年，整个风电光伏的成本可能在全球范围之内至少下降了有1半甚至在部分的区域会降低到了90%以上这我觉得这个实际上是一个能够形成一个比较好的一个正向循环的一个过程所以说就是说。它通过这种评估，我们看出来，它由于它这个成本或者成本较高，产业不成熟然后我们着力的通过创新去解决这些问题，然后反过来之后然后形成一个不断相互促进的一个结果这我觉得这个可能很多的领域都要按照这个模式去进一步的去推进。好，谢谢。
对。 Thank you very much. I'll also ask Dr. Andy and Dr. Ju to maybe complement some of the questions that was asked here. And we don't have much time to, I think, answer each separately, but if you could combine your answer to those questions, will be much appreciated.
Yes, probably just focus on one issue is the science policy interface. I think one of the obstacle barrier for that putting environmental and climate issues into evaluation is there's a big gap between science and the policy until now. We scientists publish a lot of papers, and we do a lot of pure science, and we have a lot of nice results, but the question is how to translate into something that can be understood by policymakers and can be heard by policymakers. On the other hand, and the policymakers are seeking answers for many questions, but just not know where to go. There's one practice in these countries where trying to have some so-called SDG demonstration districts to bridge the science and the policy. This is under Ministry of Science Technology. So far, we already have about 14 city and county level demonstration regions. The idea is trying to bring science-based understanding of sustainable development into practice. And each of those demonstration zones has different focus. For example, two such demonstration zones I am responsible for working with is focus on the climate change and the urban resilience. So we're trying to how to put this climate change and environmental standard into this county level, city level planning, and by considering the environmental issues and climate change issues, and also reflect into this urban planning and the regional planning so that they can better handle this, adapt or mitigate those issues. If this going well, this will be hopefully will upscale into a higher level, province or national level. But now it's still in the early phase. It's about already 6 years so far. So hopefully that we are going to go into a higher level.
Thank you. Dr. Rowe?
Just further continuation of that, along with what China is doing to bridge that gulf between science and science research and policy. The National Academies of Sciences in the U.S. and in particular Bill Clark, who was recently retired from Harvard, put a lot of work into communicating science and into developing ways of doing science that will lead to action much more rapidly, etc. We, at the Packard Foundation, we did some of this, and we found the major barrier was the institutional structure for graduate students and postdoctoral students who had to hold back their work until it could be peer-reviewed, published. So then it was, there were other institutional barriers, but that's just one example of something that needs to change, but is very difficult to change. I want to address the more fundamental issue, and it's something that you mentioned, is that we do have examples. We have good examples of approaches that restore or at least don't cause harm for the environment and achieve the social and economic ones. I was part of a team doing a large International Fund for Agricultural Development evaluation covering about 10 or 15 years. And it was a thematic evaluation, so it was huge. And we found that 30% of the country projects and programs and policies were actually either achieving do no harm or exceeding it and moving towards restoration. And we communicated that. And what really struck us was that the management response really focused on the obvious conclusion is that 70% are actually harming the environment. Well, it's agriculture. There is going to be harm from agriculture. The question is, can you take what you know from your successes and scale them out within your organization? Because they're there, they're all working within the same framework. And what we found in common, my final point, what we found in common across those was that they always took the first step towards nature, towards ecosystems. First step in northeast Brazil, which is a semi-arid area with increasing drought, where 75% of the wells are saline or brackish, and therefore unusable. What they have been doing is restoring the water retention and capture capacities of the natural landscape through replanting and terracing, etc., and preparing the humans to manage those resources sensibly once they reappear. And that's the common thing we found in all of those cases, is they went to the natural system first, because it's the natural system that we destroyed that is the origin of the problems now.
Thank you, Andy. I want to make sure that the very provocative questions are also answered in terms of what is holding us back from having more adaptive governance approach and more adaptive evaluation approach. What is that makes it so difficult to, in practice, integrate environmental lens into all evaluations? And maybe I'll ask our South African brave participant to start answering this, and then I'll actually ask all of you to answer this as quickly as you can.
Thanks for that difficult question. I think as some of the speakers have indicated as to who must prioritize, is it only evaluators who need to integrate climate issues in evaluation? And my view is that we need many or interested people to take up this call to be regenerative in our practices. I think earlier on I spoke about planners or people who plan government programs to also take into consideration the two criteria that I spoke about, because it's quite critical that as we plan the interventions that we want to implement, for example, to address poverty, inequality, and unemployment in the South African case, we also look at what will be the impact of those interventions on the environment. Yeah, I think I can leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Please pass it to Andy. And you can also reflect on a specific question to Costa Rica.
There was a direct question from me.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do it?
Yeah,
okay,
please.
thank you. First of all, thank you for direction the difficult question to my colleagues from the table. I got the easy one. ¿Cómo se solucionan los temas de gobernanza en la evaluación? Lo que hemos hecho y lo que pensamos que da resultados es partir de un proceso neutral al inicio, ¿sí? Cuando las instituciones se acercan y dicen, nos demandan una evaluación. No obstante, cuando estamos diseñando la evaluación en conjunto con ellos, con ellas, la neutralidad completamente se pierde. ¿Por qué? Porque la evaluación adapta la forma y es sensible al contexto en el cual se gesta el programa que está siendo evaluado. Entonces, si existen de entrada problemas o inconvenientes en la gobernanza para lograr los resultados que la intervención pública se propone, ya sea por términos normativos o por términos conceptuales, tenemos que tener la capacidad para hacer las preguntas correctas dentro de la evaluación para que sean respondidas dentro del proceso como tal. Y ahí participan diversos actores, no solamente Mideplan como ente rector. Eso es fundamental. Y quisiera dedicar 2 minutos a contarles que la semana anterior estuvimos presentando una evaluación de diseño a las autoridades del Ministerio de Ambiente y Energía, y ustedes no pueden imaginar cuán feliz estaba el viceministro de Ambiente con los resultados de la evaluación. Los resultados de la evaluación eran un desastre. La intervención estaba realmente mal, era todo rojo, así rojo y naranja cuando mucho. Y eso es difícil de ver, que un agente político vea con satisfacción una evaluación con esos resultados, usualmente son más resistentes. Eso es lo que yo he visto tradicionalmente. Y él estaba feliz, estaba contento porque iba a tener o tenía ya la evidencia para saber qué hacer y cómo hacerlo. Cada cosa que íbamos estableciendo en las evidencias, en los hallazgos que le presentamos, él decía, sí, eso pasa, así es, correcto. Esa es la manera, construir las evaluaciones en conjunto, que ésta capture y que sea sensible al contexto en el cual se implementa la intervención, y por sí mismo los resultados de la evaluación van a llegar o van a derivar en buen puerto. Y otro elemento, es justamente el involucramiento de otros actores. Hemos tenido procesos de evaluación asociados con los colegas de Alemania, de otras fuentes de cooperación internacional, y eso genera un respaldo, genera también una mayor capacidad a la hora de planear o de innovar o de desarrollar métodos para que la evaluación sea más poderosa y sea más informativa. Thank you.
Gracias, Eddie. And last but not least, Camila, I would like to ask you to reflect on how we can be a bit more bold into our action, to be more adaptive into how evaluations are guiding policies, integrating environmental and climate lens, and what would future M&E systems should be doing it better? How should we doing it better? A very difficult question to end with you.
Okay, you want the diplomatic answer or you want the real answer?
We want a real answer. We're here for real answers.
Okay, well, from a government perspective, looking at the question that was asked to each of us about what is holding us back, let me respond to that and I'll close with the diplomatic response, is that there is a lack of political will, that some of the changes that we would like to see take too long. And the reality is that most policy decision makers at the high level are interested in immediate, low-hanging fruit results. So if you're within an election 5-year cycle, what can we achieve within 5 years? But in this space, we know that some of the results we are looking for is going to go way beyond that. So in terms of incorporating evaluation at a national level in government and governance and policy decision making, it is very difficult because you cannot put a time limit to it, grasp it immediately. So that's often a challenge. And in terms of the future, how we can be bold, that's an interesting question because I represent government, but as a practitioner, as a technical officer, my response would be that we need to look beyond just the now and understanding that the evaluations we do, and I think somebody said it in one of the presentations, that the evaluations that we do now is going to determine what we do for the future. And I think when it comes to climate change and all of this happening, that we need to prioritize evaluation, building an evaluation culture. I mean, in my small island, evaluation culture is not there. We make assumptions. We wake up one morning and decide, well, this is the goal. Or depending on how many voices you hear, well, then this is what we should be doing. Or you might cut the ribbon, open the building, and then you say, wow, it's a success. And we really need to change and build that evaluation culture moving forward. So that's my response.
Thank you very much for your honest and diplomatic answer. It was a pleasure to host this panel, really outstanding experts and dedicated government professionals. Thank you so much for your interest and for your attendance, for your questions. I think the major takeout from this session is that we cannot be talking about the future of M&E systems without talking about how environment and climate need to be better addressed in this. And by addressing, I mean very bold actions to better integrate and find linkages of climate with the national development agenda to enhance cooperation, to enhance capacity building, so that the two worlds of climate and development professionals, evaluation professionals are speaking to each other. And I think that's enough to start with. Thank you very much.